All right, good day, class. Let's continue part two of art history. This is again a survey of Western art history, this time from the Baroque to the Rococo period of the 21st or to the 21st century. So, in the Baroque and Rococo period, this is an exaggerated motion and clear detail used to produce drama, exuberance, and grandeur in sculpture, painting, and architecture. If earlier in the part one, from the prehistoric period to the Renaissance period, we were able to understand that art there was manifested through visual art, the use of visual art. This time, it is with the use of exaggerated motion and a clear detail in producing drama, exuberance, and grandeur in their sculpture, painting, and architecture. So from cave crafts or cave na mga inscriptions, karon makita na nato the evolution to the more modern presentation of art, such as in sculpture, painting, and in architecture. What are the key points in this particular period? Famous painters of the Baroque era include Rubens, Caravaggio, and Rembrandt. The chiaroscuro technique refers to the interplay between light and dark that was often used in Baroque, as what we have discussed before, of dimly lit scenes to produce a very high contrast, dramatic atmosphere, while Baroque architecture was characterized by new explorations of form, light, and shadow and dramatic intensity. Okay, now as we go along with this discussion, we are going to understand that it also goes into different periods. Say, for example, the Baroque period is or in the Baroque there is a period of artistic style that started around 1600, wherein majority of these are found in Europe. The Baroque style is characterized by exaggerated motion and clear detail used to produce drama, exuberance, and grandeur in sculpture, painting, architecture, literature, dance, and music. Okay, as what you can see in this depiction, it is the Massacre of the Innocents by Peter Paul Rubens. So if you can see, there is all the elements present, the exaggerated motion and the clear detail used in producing or detailing the drama of the scene, the exuberance, the grandeur of what the scene was or what happened in that particular pict or in that particular painting or artwork. Now, in the later years of the Baroque and Rococo period, a style characterized by increasingly decorative and elaborative works followed. Gian Lorenzo Bernini was the master of Baroque architecture in Rome. St. Peter's Square was one of his greatest achievements, wherein St. Peter's Square was designed by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, has been praised as a masterstroke of Baroque theater. Si Gian Lorenzo Bernini was also the most important Italian sculptor during the Baroque period, both in Rome and throughout in the entire Europe peninsula. Baroque sculpture attempted to capture dynamic movement of human figures, spiraling around an empty central vortex or reaching outwards into the surrounding space. Why are we talking about all these things? Partly, class, because this encompasses history. And these are works that until now we can still see. For example, when you go to Rome, you can see the St. Peter's Square. For you to understand the essence and the beauty of St. Peter's Square, you also have to understand the design by Bernini and the meaning of what the design entailed, especially during those times. Okay. On the other hand, still life painting flourished during the golden age of the Dutch Republic. Still lifes offered a great opportunity to display skill in painting textures and surfaces in great detail and with highly realistic light effects. Food of all textures, colors, and shapes, silver cutlery, intricate patterns, and subtle folds in tablecloths, and flowers were all challenged by the painters. So we need to say they depicted somewhat what we call now as 3D, close to the real thing. Virtually all still lives had a moralistic message, usually concerning the brevity of life. This is known as the Vanitas theme. The Vanitas theme was included in explicit symbols such as skull or less obvious symbols such as a half-peeled lemon. Flowers wilt and food decays, and silver is of no use to the soul. Nevertheless, the force of this message seems less powerful in the more elaborate pieces of the second half of the century. Now, let's talk about European and American art in the 18th and 19th century. Now, large amounts of art were products of different styles during this time. Key points are as follows. European neoclassicism in the visual arts began in circa 1760 in opposition to the decadence of Baroque and Rococo styles. Neoclassicism refers to movements in the arts that draw inspiration from the classical art and culture of ancient Greece and Rome. So, meaning to say, they went back to the ancient times of Greece and Rome. Rococo style in painting echoes the qualities evident in other manifestations of the style, including serpentine lines, heavy use of ornament, as well as themes revolving around playfulness, love, and nature. Rococo emphasized the asymmetry of forms, while Baroque was the opposite. Romanticism, fueled by the French Revolution, was a reaction to the scientific rationalism and classicism of the Age of Enlightenment. Landscape painting in Europe and America greatly increased in prominence during the 18th and particularly the 19th century. Realism arose in opposition to Romanticism, which had dominated French literature and art since the late 18th century. Impressionism is a 19th century movement known for its paintings that aimed to depict the transience of light and to capture scenes of modern life and the natural world in their ever-shifting conditions. And modern sculpture is generally considered to have begun with the work of French sculptor Auguste Rodin. Okay, so these are just the key points that you ought to remember when we are going to discuss European and American art in two centuries, the 18th and the 19th century. Let's first discuss the neoclassicism. Neoclassicism have different artistic style that highlights the Enlightenment period and draw inspiration from the classical art and culture of ancient Greece and Rome. As what we can see here, neoclassicists believed that strong drawing was rational and therefore was morally superior, and that art should be cerebral, not sensual. Meaning to say, class, it depicts more of uh, what the human mind can comprehend art rather than what the emotion can comprehend. Kasi nga, it's more of cerebral, meaning to say in the brain, okay, rather than sensual, which is more in our feelings, in our apathy. Okay, so it challenges the interpretation as well as the comprehension of the artwork rather than how we feel about the artwork. Okay, we also have the Rococo. The Rococo style is characterized by elaborate ornamentation, asymmetrical values, and pastel color palette, as well as curved or serpentine lines. So as you can see in the picture or in the image here on top, there are a lot of elements found. Asymmetrical value, pastel color palette, di ba? Imo makita niya pastel ang colors niya, curved or serpentine ang iyang lines, wala kay makita niya ang straight line. Okay? So those elements are found there. Okay. Antoine Watteau is considered to be the first great Rococo painter, who influenced later Rococo masters such as Boucher and Fragonard. So if we can see here, the Pygmalion and Galatea, this is one of the famous sculptures by Ethan Maurice Falconet. The subject is taken from the Roman poet Ovid's Tale of Pygmalion. Pygmalion is depicted in rapturous amazement at the feet of his loved object, a nude sculpture, just at the moment when it is given life by Venus, the goddess of love. So if you know Pygmalion, the tale of Pygmalion, di ba na siya gisculpt nga babae? And then, si Venus, since na in love si Pygmalion ato yung sculpture nga babae, si Galatea, naluoy ang goddess nga si Venus. Kasi nga, the Venus is the goddess of love, beauty, etc., etc. So iyang kita nga ag life ang sculpture ni Pygmalion, and they were heavily criticized about it, and the story continues. Okay, so that's the story of Pygmalion and Galatea. In sculpture, The work of Etienne Maurice Falconet is widely considered to be the best representative of Rococo style. In the 18th century, Rococo architecture was a lighter, more graceful, yet also more elaborate version of the Baroque architecture. Now let's proceed to the Romanticism style. Romanticism legitimized the individual imagination as a critical authority which permitted freedom from classical notions or form in art. Romanticism was also influenced by Sturm and Drug, a German counter-enlightenment movement that emphasized subjectivity and intense emotion. Okay. Géricault and Delacroix were leaders of French Romantic painting and both produced iconic history paintings. Delacroix's Liberty Leading the People remains with the Medusa, one of the best known works of French Romantic painting. Both of these works reflected current events and appealed to public sentiment. Since during these times, these were the times of revolutions, uprisings, agawan ng trono, etc., etc. So that's basically how they wanted it to be depicted, either cerebral or sensual. Okay, so it just depends on the style used by these artists. The Spanish artist Francisco Goya is considered perhaps the greatest painter of this of the Romantic period. Though he did not necessarily self-identify with the movement, his oeuvre reflects the integration of many styles. Okay? Landscape painting also flourished during this period. The glorified depiction of a nation's natural wonders and the development of a distinct national style were both ways in which nationalism influenced landscape painting in Europe and in America. Now, during the late 1860s, the Barbizon painters attracted the attention of a younger generation of French artists studying in Paris. Claude Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Alfred Sisley, and Frederic Bazille, among others, practiced plein air painting and developed what would later be called Impressionism, an extremely influential movement during this time. Let's talk first about realism. Realist painters often depicted common laborers and ordinary people in ordinary surroundings engaged in real activities. Okay. Gustave Courbet is known as the main proponent of realism, and his paintings challenged convention by depicting unidealized peasants and workers, often a grand scale traditionally reserved for paintings of religious or historical objects. Di ba? We've learned that uh, most artworks before depicted were in grandiose manner to really emphasize the religion, the king, the queens, the event, the emotion, the drama. So during this time, realist painters depicted also the common people, the mga ordinaryo lang ng mga tao, katong mga magsasaka, laborers, etc., etc. So basically, that's how they tried to emphasize that these people also matter in society sa katilingban by depicting them in such a grand fashion, uh, similar to the religious or historical subjects, which has a lot of significance during our time now. Jean-Francois Millet is noted for his scenes of peasant farmers, of which The Gleaners is one of his most well-known due to its real representation. Okay, now let's go to the Impressionism. Impressionist works characteristically portray overall visual effects instead of details and use short, broken brush strokes of mixed and unmixed color to achieve an effect of intense color vibration. In Impressionism, this is typically the scenes were painted of modern life and often painted outdoors or en plein air. Okay. Edouard Manet, a French painter, was a pivotal figure in the transition from realism to impressionism. Basically, when we talk about impressionism, it is more of what you perceive rather than what actually is. His early masterworks, The Luncheon of the Grass and Olympia, engendered great controversy and served as a way into creating a much more impactful impressionism. Today, these are considered watershed paintings that mark the genesis of modern art. Okay, in the Luncheon on the Grass, The painting depicts the juxtaposition of a female nude and a scantily dressed female bather on a picnic with two fully dressed men in a rural setting. This was rejected by the Salon jury of 1863. Manet seized the opportunity to exhibit this and two other paintings in the 1863 Salon de Refusal, where the painting sparked public notoriety and controversy. Because if you're going to look at it, Impressionism, this is now the impression of what women were during those times. Play objects of men who were clothed, comfortable, meaning to say lower than the men or the male gender. Modern sculpture is generally considered to have begun with the work of French sculptor Auguste Rodin. Rodin's most original work departed from traditional themes of mythology and allegory in favor of modeling the human body with realism and celebrating individual character and physicality. Post-Impression refers to a genre that rejected the naturalism of Impressionism in favor of using color and form in more expressive manners. Post-Impressionists extended the use of vivid colors, thick application of paint, distinctive brush strokes, and real life subject matter, and were more inclined to emphasize geometric forms, distort forms for expressive effect, and to use unnatural or arbitrary colors in their compositions. Paul Cézanne is a post impressionist painter whose work highlights the transition from the 19th century to the early 20th century. Now let's talk about modernism, still on the understanding of early human life and culture through visual arts. Modernism uses symbolism was a late 19th century art movement of French, Russian, and Belgian origin. Art Nouveau was an international style of art and architecture that was most popular from 1890 to 1910. Camera photography was invented in the first decades of the 19th century, and the Fauves were a group of early 20th century modern artists based in Paris whose works challenged Impressionist values. So in modernism, there are also different styles. First is symbolism. Symbolism was largely a reaction against naturalism and realism, anti-idealistic styles which were attempts to represent reality in its gritty particularity and to elevate the humble and the ordinary over the ideal. Symbolism, on the other hand, favored spirituality and the imagination and dreams, such as in this particular picture. We also have Art Nouveau. Art Nouveau was inspired by natural forms and structures, especially talking about geometry, natural motifs, and intricate embellishments. The modernism or the development of photography. Photography represents the first instance of an artistic medium being used widely by the masses as a mode of visual expressionism or expression, such as now. Another style is Fauvism. The Fauvist movement, led by Henri Matisse and André Derain, officially lasted for only 4 years, from 1904 to 1908. Example of this painting was The Woman with a Hat by Henri Matisse in 1905. This painting was rejected by critics when initially exhibited, but was soon acquired by avant-garde collectors Leo and Gertrude Stein. Okay, for reasons why it was rejected is because it was a contrast of all the styles that were usually depicted, katutarang romanticism, realism, etc., etc. If you see the color patterns, the strokes, it does not really depict an artwork that was seen as important pieces of art during those times. We also have Primitivism and Cubism. One of the most influential artists of the 20th century, Pablo Picasso, is widely known for his involvement in Cubism and Primitivism. Example, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon by Pablo Picasso in 1907. This work is influenced by Primitivism and is considered to be one of the earliest examples of Cubist painting. Picasso and George Braque co-founded the Cubist movement, one of the most influential movements in modern art. And then we have Expressionism. Expressionist artists sought to express meaning or emotional experience rather than physical reality. Take note, it's more of expressing meaning or emotional experience rather than the physical realities. And then we have the abstract sculpture, Dada, and Surrealism. The Fountain in 1917 by Marcel Duchamp is an image which is in the public domain. This is an example of a ready-made sculpture. Duchamp's appropriation of a urinal as a piece of art challenged the prevailing definition of sculpture. Why? In surrealism, this is further expanded upon contemporary definitions of sculpture by introducing the concept of the quote-unquote ready-made. While in Dada, it was a multidisciplinary art movement that rejected the prevailing artistic standards by producing anti-art cultural works. We also have American regionalism. Regionalism refers to a naturalist and realist style of painting that dominated American rural painting in the 1930s, such as American Gothic by Grant Wood. Using a realist approach, the artistic focus of regionalism was from artists who shunned city life and rapidly developing technological advances to create scenes of rural life, like itong mga nasa bukid, sa barn, farms, etc., etc. We also have abstract expressionism. Abstract expressionism was an American post-World War II art movement. Number 5 by Jackson Pollock is an action painting, is a style in which paint is spontaneously splattered, smeared, or dripped onto the canvas. Abstract expressionism has an image of being rebellious, anarchic, highly idiosyncratic, and nihilistic. In practice, the term is applied to any number of artists working in New York who had quite different styles, and even to work that is neither especially abstract nor expressionist. We also have pop art in Campbell's Soup Cans by Annie Warhol. Warhol's Campbell's soup cans have become synonymous with the pop art movement and exemplify his preoccupation with notions of pop culture and capitalism. The pop art movement began in the 1960s and questioned the boundaries between high and low art. Okay. Now, with all of these discussions of styles across different periods, kindly answer the following. What did you learn about the history of art from Baroque period to the contemporary period? Just cite one example per period and then give your impression as to what this particular style is. So I will be recording again another video and I'll see you in class.